This is my 1987 BMW K75, and this is my tiny workshop, which is in fact a metal container. Today I am going to grease the splines of the prop shaft. In order to grease the splines, you need to remove the back wheel, you need to take off the bevel box and pull the prop shaft out. Now, as you can see, I need to make myself some space because I need to get to this side of the bike, so I need to move this first. You'll often see the lubricant quoted as a brand called Starburags, which is German, but this is what Motorworks and Motor Bins recommend and supply. This is Castrol white paste, and that's about £7, and that's easily enough to do both ends several times. There are plenty of videos showing people how to do this, but I'm going to do it using just the tools that come with the bike. So we'll get at the seat comes off, tools are in the back. I have actually got a little magnetic cap there because the thing broke off, so I put a magnet. There's my tool roll complete with original scrim, your BMW scrim, and then there's the tools in there. These are the tools that came with the bike. Over the years I've added a few, like I've doubled up the 10mm spanners, but otherwise this is pretty much what you get. So you need to take the back wheel off, and there's the wheel wrench, the extension bar, which you'll see has got a dimple in it just there that goes on there. The spark plug extension fits in the wheel wrench and that makes it easier to undo. All the other spanners I'll be using, and obviously you need the Allen keys. Otherwise there's not much else you really need. So you need to take the back wheel off, and you need to disconnect the brake arm, and you also need to take out this electrical connector. This is the sender for the speedometer, because that runs along there and that cable does not want to be stretched or damaged, so that can be taken off. Taking the screw out, but I won't prise this out until right at the last minute because obviously there's oil in there. So you can see that this is all in the way of getting at the Allen heads, which are just here. So the best thing to do is disconnect the shock and then let this drop down, and then you can get at the Allen heads much easier. So that's the next thing to do, is to disconnect the shock. Now on mine, because this is here, you can't just pull it across and get it off, it won't have it. You need to undo it at both ends. I'm ready to take the shock off and I need to push that bolt through. In order to do that I had to undo the mudguard and let it drop down because otherwise that won't come through. You push that through, and I have got a stand underneath it so this doesn't suddenly drop, and I put the stand there rather than here because I need to undo this and pull this off. So hopefully I should be able to just move that, push that out. That's a bit stiff. So if you slide the stand back that way, this all drops down and that just drops out, and you can pull it backwards to get it off. So it needs to come down a little bit more than that. So the swinging arm is now down as far as it can go, which means that I can now get at these 4 Allen headed screws, undo those, and then hopefully this just pops off. One underneath nearest the wheel, this one, this is always full of dirt and oil and stuff, so you'll have to scrape it out before you can get the Allen key in there. So that should be good now, hopefully, getting all the dirt out of it. The Allen head goes in there. Right. And if it's really stiff, you can use the sleeve from the wheel wrench just to help to undo it, like that. When you get to undoing this one, this rod is in the way, but all you need to do is push down this lever and then you can move that and it's out of the way, not a problem. To undo the one with the cable clip in it, I've now disconnected the speedo cable and just covered the hole up with some gaffer to make sure nothing horrible goes down there. Now I'm getting near the crucial point, because once this one is undone, there's only that one holding it on. There is no gasket in here. This should just actually now drop back. As I'm undoing this, you can see that this is starting to drop back. There's only this one screw holding it in now. So the best thing to do would be put something underneath it to take its weight so it doesn't fall off in a big heap. There's a few blocks of wood there that just bring it up to the right height. So hopefully, as we undo the last one, it should just gently part. Right, so when I last did this, I copperized all the bolts. So they should be nice and easy to get out. The last one's stiffer, purely because it's got all the weight on it. It's still coming out though. 2 days later. Right, there we go. So now hopefully, if all goes well, I should just be able to lift this up and ease it off. Oh, that doesn't want to go. Oh, there we go. Oh, well, that was actually rather easy. So those splines are all looking rather good, which is encouraging. These splines need cleaning down, but looking down the edges of them, they look good. There's a little bit of oil in there and a little sort of mucky spludge in there, which I wasn't really expecting. So I've given that a good clean, and that all looks very sound. And I've taken what looked like loose oil out of there, and I've actually stood it over and tried to see if it seeps through, and it doesn't. So I'm not really overly concerned about that. I know that the bevel box itself hasn't lost any oil because I check it regularly. Now the next thing to do is I actually want to get this out so that I can grease the other end. Now that means there's a universal joint at the other end, so presumably if I lift this up high enough to get it straight, I should be able to just pull that out. I can feel it moves backwards and forwards, so that's a good start. I'll have a go at that. So I've got a pair of 30-year-old pliers, but I do not want to be doing that because I obviously don't want to damage the splines. That's the whole point of this exercise. So I need to find a way I can grip hold of that without damaging it. Maybe I can just put a cloth or something in there. So that's my bit of BMW scrim, and that won't work. This is another trick to try. Put a Jubilee clip on the end of it and use a lever on the side of it. You need to protect this face with something, obviously, so you don't scratch it. I'll see if that works. My first Jubilee clip was a modern, cheap, crap one. So I've gone to one that's probably about 30 years old. God knows where it came from. But it's much stronger than that one. And then I've got my 19mm spanner. And I've found that if you just put that in there, you can just pop it out. It was as easy as that. And then you see the other end. Well, that does look in amazingly good condition, doesn't it? And that has still got the white paste on it. That's what you're supposed to use, not the black molybdenum stuff that creeps down the thing. So that's why that never needed to be done. I've no way of knowing if this is the original drive shaft. It's been on here at least 20 years because that's how long I've had the bike. It is in amazingly good condition. The UJ here is really lovely and free. This is extremely clean, there's no corrosion. There's a rubber damper here, and that is in extremely good condition. And you can see where the rubber is actually moulded onto the shaft, and it is in fantastic condition. So I can just paste that up and put it straight back in. So my old Jubilee clip can become part of my toolkit. It can stay on the bike now for the next time that I need it. So that's your white paste. That's what you're supposed to use. So theoretically that can last 65,000 miles. I've cleaned it all with white spirit, and then I've packed it with the white paste, making sure that I fill every channel up so that when it goes back on there's no dry spots. And then I need just to put it back. I've got a feeling it's just as easy as pushing that in there, making sure everything's lined up and straight. Got to get it in the right place. Oh, there we go. Had it in the wrong place. It just pushes in when it's correct. That's it. That isn't going to go any further. Just make sure. Now, obviously, this big lump of wood isn't in my toolkit, but you could just use a small piece of wood, and you could use that as a hammer if you wanted to. Now, I have seen videos where they talk about lubricant creep because the tube is hollow, but it seems to me that if this stuff's creeping up the tube, it's not the right material, because this is extraordinarily sticky, and it was still on the other end after 65,000 miles. So use the white paste, not the grey molybdenum stuff. Well, each to his own. If you want to do this every 8,000 miles, I guess that's up to you. Now, I was concerned about finding some runny oil in here when I opened it up, which really could have only come through that seal. But I've stood this on its end all night and nothing has come through, so I'm assuming that the weeping is so slight that it's not actually worth rebuilding that. I only do about 2,000 miles a year. It might take 10 years before that's going to need doing. Now that the drive shaft and the pinion end is out of alignment, when you put it back together, they've given you enough leeway to just turn it so that it drops in, and then hopefully that should just push back on like that. There's two little locating sleeves here that hold it in place, one there and one on the top. So once that's in, push it on. That's gone on rather nicely, and we can get a bolt in there to stop it falling off. I've cleaned all my bolts. Here's a tip on how to quickly clean the bolt heads. Put it in your electric drill, get one of these spongy emery pads, and then just run it on there till it's lovely and clean. I've cleaned up the cable guide and the washers, and then I'll slather them with copperies before they go back on. The cable guide only goes on one way, and it goes on the top nearest the tyre, so that's fairly easy. Just put plenty of copperies on them before they go back in, and then they'll be really easy to get back out. If you've done a good job of cleaning these all up and copperies them, you'll find that you can actually wind them back in nearly all the way by hand. Now you need to take the weight of the unit at the back. When you've got them in far enough, you can drop the arm back down so you can get the Allen key on to do it back up properly. If you're a professional mechanic, you'd be torquing these down to the right torque. As we're only using the tools on the bike, what I do is I do this till it's actually biting, and then a quarter of a turn using this sleeve. Now if you're superhumanly strong, obviously take care. From now on it's just a question of putting it back together, so remember to put the cable guide in, put the speedo feed in. There's an interesting thing you can do with this. If you have a soldering iron and you put it close by it, the inductance of the soldering iron will send a pulse to the speedometer, and you can calibrate the speedometer with it. I've never done it, but I know that you can. If you've got brakes with a brake rod, make sure you put it in when the arm is nice and low down, otherwise when you lift it back up you won't be able to put it back together. And then basically just put back everything that you took off. Job done now. It's taken me less than 10 minutes to put it all back together, refit the back wheel and calibrate the brake. So that was a really rather easy job, much easier than I was expecting, and achieved only using the BMW bike toolkit and a few bits of wood. This is a useful little tip. The Allen keys are always getting lost and displaced. If you buy just these little neodymium magnets, which are about £3 for 10, they're super powerful, that hold together the whole lot with one magnet. When they break or wear out, you just stick another one in. Brilliant things.